When we think about organic produce, most people think that it's healthier, better for the environment, and better for animals. A lot of the times, these beliefs stem from the common human notion that what is natural is better. But in reality, conventional, genetically modified produce is better than or at least equal to organic in every verified way. And I'm going to go through all of the reasons why. This video is split up into 3 parts: environment, animals, and health. So let's start with the environment. A lot of people who are concerned for the environment buy organic thinking that it's more eco-friendly. So why do people think that it is? Well, many people think that it uses a lot less herbicides and insecticides and that it's more sustainable. But it's not. Compared to conventional GMOs, organic requires a lot more pesticides and a lot more land. First, let's talk about land use. GMOs increase yield a lot. Here are some graphs from a 2012 meta-analysis showing organic to conventional yield ratios of all crops in the first graph and then some specific crops. As you can see, that is a pretty big difference. This meta-analysis of 147 studies on GM crops found that it increases yield by 22%. This means that you're getting more food for less land and that you have to deforest less land to convert for agriculture. GMOs also allow you to decrease pesticide use by 37%. That's because of a few reasons. In organic farming, to prevent weeds, a farmer will have to till their fields, spray the entire field with herbicide to kill the weeds, and then plant their crops, hoping no weeds will sprout. If weeds do sprout, they are a lot harder to manage because you can't just spray your field with herbicides, because that will also kill the crops that you're farming. That's also one reason that yield is lower. GMOs have a transgene for herbicide resistance. This means that farmers don't have to till their fields as often, they don't have to spray their entire fields before planting their crops, and they can just spray their fields when the weeds do show up. They can even spray specific areas and it won't harm their crops. However, it's also important to keep in mind that a lot of synthetic herbicides have longer lifespans and they take longer to degrade. This is to make them more effective against weeds, but it also means that they can easily wash down into streams or contaminate groundwater. This is actually pretty common. That said, organic herbicides can also contaminate groundwater and streams, but they do degrade faster. However, organic farming does require more herbicides. So whether synthetic or organic herbicides are more harmful for the environment depends entirely on the herbicide. As for insecticides, the evidence is a lot more clear-cut and in favor of GM crops. GM crops can be modified with transgenes for insect resistance, for example, Bt crops. Bt crops are hugely popular and they're worth discussing. They're modified with a gene from the bacteria Bacillus thuringiensis, which produces a protein called crytoxin. It activates in the alkaline stomachs of insects that feed on the crops, for example, corn borers on Bt corn. Crytoxin then binds to receptors in the stomachs of these insects and creates pores, which then leads to the insect's death. Not only are these crops extremely species specific, but now you don't have to spray your fields with pesticides. Ironically, one of the most common pesticides in organic farming is Bt, just in spray form. So if it's in the plant, that's conventional GMO, but if you spray it on, that's organic. And it's actually worse to spray it on because now it can spread through the air or water to places where you don't want it, like plants in other ecosystems. Also, as a side note, mammals don't have alkaline stomachs. Our stomachs are low pH acidic. This means that Bt crops have no chance of harming us. Another really cool example is aphid resistance. Aphids are these small insects that suck on the sap of plants, and they're a huge problem in agriculture. So these plants release a gas that deters them while attracting their predators who will then eat the aphids. So again, no spray needed and the non-targets aren't harmed. So these are just a few examples of how GMOs can decrease insecticide and herbicide use. Also, GM insect resistance is more effective than spray-on insecticide because all parts of the plant are covered. Every single part that is targeted by insects has insect resistance, whereas with spray-on insecticides, some parts of the plant will always be left uncovered. So GM insect resistance is better than organic insecticides because it is more species specific, it's more effective, and it prevents the need to spray on insecticides, and that prevents contamination and spread of pesticides into unintended environments. Another reason people think that buying organic is better is because they think that it somehow helps animals. Now, this video is focusing mainly on produce, but I'm just going to point out that regardless of whether you buy conventional or organic animal products, you're supporting nearly identical welfare conditions for animals. When it comes to organic animal products, the whole animal welfare thing is just a marketing gimmick meant to make you feel less guilty, and there's undercover footage of what actually happens in organic farms. If you buy organic eggs and milk, male chicks are still ground up alive or gassed, hens are still kept in horrible, cramped conditions and tortured, and cows are still raped and brutalized. It's the same case with meat, and an animal will still be tortured and have their throat slit or worse. So for animal products, buying organic or conventional supports nearly identical conditions for livestock and does not help the animals whose products you are eating. Now back to the main topic. Does buying organic plants actually help animals? Of course, environmental impact will usually have an impact on animals, and as discussed, organic farming requires a lot more land than conventional, which means more deforestation. It's also a lot less sustainable because organic farming requires more tilling because you can't spray herbicides onto plants after planting them, and tilling decreases soil viability. Also, GMO insect resistance is more narrow spectrum, which means it causes fewer insect deaths and fewer non-target deaths. Now, one of the most important things to consider in this case is fertilizer. Organic fertilizer is composed of natural organic materials like plant materials, human and animal waste, cow manure, animal bones, horns, and other byproducts. Byproducts can account from between 40 to 60% of an animal's weight, which means the animal agriculture industry can make a decent profit from their sales. Synthetic fertilizers are composed mostly of man-made materials, usually a byproduct of the petroleum industry. They are a lot more nutrient dense. So conventional farming uses a much smaller amount of animal byproducts than organic farming. So by buying organic, you are supporting the animal agriculture industry to a much greater extent, and that's completely unnecessary. So for vegans, including myself, that makes no sense. Okay, another reason people think organic is better is because of health. However, there's no evidence showing that organic is better for you or that conventional is worse. Here is a Stanford meta-analysis of 240 studies from 1966 to 2011. Risk of exposure to pesticide residue is higher in people who eat conventional. However, the risk of exceeding the maximum limit is very small, and in the 3 studies that actually measure the risk of exceeding the maximum limit, the risk was slightly higher for organic than for conventional. 2 of these studies found virtually no difference, while one found 6% risk of organic and 2% risk for conventional. So even if you are exposed to pesticide residues, the amount probably won't be high enough to cause any harm, and if it is, there's a higher chance of this happening with organic plants than with conventional. Also, there's no evidence showing that organic food is more nutritious than conventional. Now, let me just explain something that a lot of people find confusing. Significant in a scientific study means that a result is unlikely to have occurred by chance. So when researchers say that there is no evidence to show that organic is significantly more nutritious than conventional, this means that if a study in the analysis did find organic or conventional to be more nutritious than the other, this was attributable to random chance. So organic and conventional are equally nutritious. So taking everything into consideration, it makes no sense to buy organic over conventional. It's more expensive despite conventional being equally as healthy, and it's worse for the environment and animals. Also, keep in mind the GMOs can literally save millions of lives and are doing just that. Just take a look at golden rice. Millions of people rely on rice as a staple food, but since it lacks vitamin A, millions, especially children, end up dying of vitamin A deficiency. Golden rice is modified with a transgene for beta-carotene synthesis, which means it can prevent vitamin A deficiency in humans. And it also means that it can save all those lives. But GMOs definitely have some actual risks that can jeopardize our modern agricultural systems, like genetic pollution or resistance. These problems can be easily prevented, but farmers and the general public need to understand them in order to prevent them and limit them in the future. I intend to make a video about this in the future, but for now, if you like this video, subscribe to this channel and I will try to make more videos like this in the future. Thanks for watching.